Eddie Izzard, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am okay. I'm knackered. I'm a bit knackered. Because I've been doing Hamlet for some time now in the States, and yeah, there's no real way of getting around the fact it's 2 hours and it's a drama, and you die at the end of it, and it takes it out of you. So
And it's just you.
yes, it's just me, and so I get. It does make you knackered, which it should do, and it does. But that's fine, and I'm just about to bring it back home, launch it in London. So I'm ready for that. But yeah, at some point I should do a holiday.
Are you good on holidays?
No.
Can you relax on a holiday?
No, I don't. No, I don't do that. So I don't even take them because Dad used to say that I was permanently on holiday, or like because I was doing what I liked to with my work. So he just thought that's my work was a holiday, and it kind of is. If you're doing something you like doing, then it is fulfilling, but it can also be knackering as well. So it'd be nice to just stop doing things.
And the last time we met, we spent the weekend in a field together.
Yep.
At Carfest, didn't we? And I think we did 2 interviews on that stage, and
yeah,
it's so much fun. And I said to you, can we do this as a radio interview? Bless you for coming back and for giving me your word and for doing this today. It's great to see you.
No problem.
So this is our first show on my Pride playlist,
right,
of Virgin Radio Pride. You give me a list of songs. We'll talk about career moments. We'll talk about you and your journey. The first song on your list is Squeeze.
Yeah, Squeeze Cool for Cats. It's the first song I bought. It's the first single I bought on pink vinyl, and I said, this is going to number 1. And it was a time of punk, and I didn't really feel very punk, and my interests were really film. I broke it into Pinewood Studios when I was 15, and comedy. I discovered Monty Python about the year before. So film, drama, and surreal comedy, they don't sit necessarily together, except for Python had done these 2 things together. So that's what really drove me. And music was there, and I did have a sense of music. That's not really what you say, is it? I did have. Well, I wasn't the kid who was going out and buying all these singles and what's the next single and this band. I've just discovered a new band, but I did feel it flow past me. And my mum died when I was a kid, when I was 6 years old, and went to boarding schools after that. That was decided between mum and dad that boarding schools were not the thing that our family normally did. We just went to state schools, but suddenly we were at these boarding schools. And so one thing about boarding schools is that you're with a load of other kids, and they would be playing their music. So all that music in the 70s sort of flowed into me. But this was me saying, this track, I heard it on the radio, and I said, I'm going to go and buy this. And it was on pink vinyl. I didn't know it was a pink vinyl when I went to buy it. And I thought, this is my first one. And on my list, there were my first 2 singles that I ever bought, but this was the first one. And I said, this was going to number 1. And it got to number 2, so I thought, I'm pretty good on this. I just think my taste is quite mainstream, and I had to develop a more alternative sensibility. But I wasn't pure punk, angry punk. The attitude of the energy of punk, just it wasn't where I was at. So I found that quite alienating in the sense that I can't be that. I'm not of that. I'm just of something else. But then certain bands came through the punk, or maybe the end of the punk movement, that were akin to it or linked to it, but probably they didn't feel they were the pure aggressive energy of punk, the spitting punk, that wasn't really them. I know the Police talked about this when they were playing, and Sting and the guys were playing, and they go, everyone was spitting, guys, you just had to go through that period, and they were obviously longing for the spitting to stop, so that...
Didn't spitting mean that they approved of the
I
act?
Believe so, but yeah, if you're up there and getting gobbed on,
it didn't feel like...
I don't think that was really working for everyone. And there must have been the day, if somebody went back in history and worked it out, there must have been the day the last spit came out of someone's mouth. They said, hey, that finished a year ago, mate. And
it's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, or did they spit back? I don't know. It's just it's not quite about the music, but it's about more spitting. Anyway, so yeah, Squeeze Cool for Cats.
Can I go back? I asked you about this last year, about your boarding school experience. Was it a good experience, and did it shape you?
Was it a good experience? Well, I would have preferred not to have gone to boarding school. I preferred Mum to been alive and not to go to boarding school. In the end, there was a lot of crying and being self-indulgent, which made me understandably self-indulgent for me, just feeling sorry for myself, going in at the age of 6. And I cried off and on until 11. Then I had a fight with a kid called Andrew Isherwood, who was in the same football team. He was the captain of the football team. He was very good. 11, I don't suppose I really realised that, but he did. He was a very good football player. He was better than me. But I got my colours second in the football team because I was very good at football. But I was a midfielder. I think he was more attacker. But anyway, we had this fight. I think it was a physical fight, altercation, you know, what you do when you're 11. And it was... I started crying in that, and I thought, I've lost. I can't win this argument now. This disagreement. I can't win it because I'm crying. I'll never cry again. So I stopped then. Now what it does, and I think this happens to a lot of kids at boarding school, it makes you emotionally numb. And if you get emotionally numb, you can survive it. But that's what you have to do to survive it. So. You know, there's a number of things about boarding schools which are not understood. They used to say that it makes people go gay, which was a ridiculous idea. Hopefully now I don't know if they've actually changed this officially in people's boarding school. Well, you know, it's just that if you are a gay kid, then if you're there with boys and you fancy boys, then there are other boys there. So that's an opportunity.
So it works out nice that way.
Yes, it works out nice that way. Or girls at girls' school. It doesn't make you go that way because I feel it's built in. I knew I was trans when I was 5, so and it was a very heterosexual. It was boarding school, and the what would you call it? The atmosphere was very heterosexual. So if anyone got a sense that you might be gay, they treated you like hell. They treated you like so. That's like utter lie, I think, about the idea of the boarding schools. Well, one, it's definitely a lie that it makes you go there, but also that the idea that there seem to be a number of films and stories that come out of that. Everyone was gay. Oh, you just went gay. And no, that's not how it worked. You just were gay or you weren't gay, and you happened to go to a school that was like that.
What an upheaval, though, around that time. So you'd lost your mum, you're at boarding school, and you've got these feelings that most of us listening to Virgin Radio probably would relate to.
Well, thinking of trans, because I fancied girls, so I could hide behind I fancy girls, so I didn't really talk much about, I fancy this girl, I fancy that girl, because again, you're in a boys' school. No, if you had a gaydar, if you had a transdar, which very few people have transdars, you weren't sensing it with me. I love football. I was considering being in the forces, being in special forces. This was my thing, and so I just seemed like some other blokey boy, but I felt in my head, if I was honest with myself, I thought actually I'd quite like to have been a girl, but let's just not talk about that because I'll get my head kicked in. That was the idea from 4 or 5 when I first thought about it, all the way through until I came out when I was 23. Actually, I first told someone at university about 19, so by the time I got to university I thought I need to start paying attention to this, but apart from that I was just lying all the way through, and lying is not good for your mental health, so I thought being honest about it later on was the best place to go. But at school I just kept it a secret. Loved playing football, very scrappy. I wasn't a good fighter, but I was very scrappy, very argumentative, so I just seemed like a handful, and no one said you must be trans. They didn't even have the word trans at that point.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so we had to go all the way through that, but I came out, I had left uni by the time I came out, but that was 40 years ago next year. Yeah, so 39 years ago now. So it was good to come out. It was so much better for me to be out.
I've got so many questions to ask you. Let's get back to your next song, Ian Jury. You've picked this because? Ian
Jury, second song that I ever bought. Again, very...
was this a limited edition as well? Was this on a pink?
No, it wasn't a pink. No, just an ordinary single. I think it's somewhere within... Because I never go back and track through all the stuff that I've got, but it's somewhere, probably in some lockup somewhere. That single is still there on vinyl. And it was just... I loved the song. I don't think I predicted where it would go in the hit parade. I'm not sure where it went in the hit parade. But Ian Jury and and the Blockheads, it was very... They were a different sound to Squeeze, but I just thought this is great, and I remember bouncing around and just saying I love this song, and New Boots and Panties, I think, is the album, and that was playing out. That is, I think it's 79, 78 or 79, 70, could be 78, and it just floating through. I remember other people playing it, and the songs just floating out. We were all kids in these houses. This is back in Eastbourne, where I'm going to be at the weekend, and you just, so the music, other people's music would float past you. It may not be necessarily your taste, but it was. You can, when you hear tracks, you take yourself back to the time when you first heard those tracks. Yeah. So yeah, that was time. So I just loved it, and I loved it. Ian Dury, I loved what he'd been through to get to where he was. A kid with polio, and just his whole demeanour, his whole attitude was just great.
So we're spending the hour together, and these are your tracks. I'm just sitting back and listening to you, because you are incredible. I saw your stand-up in London just before Christmas.
Right, yeah.
I was blown away. I mean, where does it all come from?
Well, that's Dad's sense of humour. So me, my older brother Mark Izzard, who has done the Hamlet adaptation that I'm now doing, and the Great Expectations one last year. We all have the same sense of humour, very dry, surreal, Python-esque, Goon-esque, if people know about the Goons, which were the Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe, the predecessor, the influence on Monty Python. So that's where the comedy comes from, the sense of humour. And then I realised that you could specialise in that. I wanted to act when I was 7, so me now doing Hamlet is not a crazy thing. I just started at 7 wanting to act in dramas, in Shakespeare, in whatever it is. And for certain reasons I pushed away from drama and decided to concentrate on comedy. I discovered Python, and then my dad started playing me old Goon tapes as well, so I was getting surreal comedy coming in stereo from 2 different sources, and I was too small. If you're a boy growing up, a boy, the taller boys got the better roles at school, and also if anyone did auditions, probably still, if they do auditions, they'd give you a piece of paper, read out these lines, and then I'll decide if you're any good. It's probably a teacher who's deciding, and I'm dyslexic, so sight reading of a part would have been a nightmare for me. So I would have just stumbled through this thing, and they would have obviously thought you can't act, and you're small, so you're spear carrier. If you seem to be eager, but that's it. All you got is eagerness. And then it had to take me all the way through to now doing Hamlet, playing Hamlet and Ophelia and Gertrude and Claudius, and
all by yourself,
all
in
by
one
myself,
production.
23 roles, and it working, because we've already played it through New York and
because you've been extended 3 times.
Yeah, triple extended. We've now played in 3 theatres. This will be the 4th theatre going into Riverside Studios in Hammersmith, and got rave reviews in New York, and in even better ones in Chicago. So we'll see what London thinks, because London can always be choosy about it. But
is it a tricky audience, tricky market?
What, London?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's your home audience. Anyone's home audience is going to be the hardest critics, because they say, yes, okay, I see that New York has decided they like it, and Chicago as well. But let's decide for ourselves. So, but it's fine. I just know it's in a good place, and it does work. It works with people, and it works. If you're a fan of Shakespeare, it works for you, and if you're not a fan of Shakespeare, it also works, because it is accessible. It is the best of. There's a very long version of Hamlet, and it has been edited down by my brother. It has been adapted down, and he was very particular on how we chose it, and we would extend things and contract things to get a 2-hour version that really works and is accessible. If you're 9 to 90, it will work for you, and you'll see all the arcs and the beauty of the poetry and everything. It is a serious drama. There's little elements of comedy in it, but it is a drama, and I love doing it. And it comes from doing things back when I was a kid and trying to get into school productions and just having a huge difficulty doing it all the way through. My first role that I got, having pushed from the age of 7, first role I got was when I was about 15, 16, and that was a comedic role. Then I played a drama role when I was about 17. Played in Cabaret the musical. I played the bad guy in that, who's a very charming guy who becomes the Nazi. Suddenly realizes he's a Nazi in it, and then it went off. And I mainly concentrated on comedy, but I always thought actually drama would be something I would like to bring out of me, which I started doing later in life, and now we're here.
And here we are, and I can't wait to see it. And thank you for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to it. So Nat King Cole,
yes,
tell me.
Well, Nat King Cole, just want to think of all the racism he had to deal with coming through. Is it 50s into 60s? His time. Mona Lisa. It's a beautiful song, and I sing it because I have to sing as Ophelia in Hamlet, as she is losing her mind because the Hamlet who she was attracted to and he was attracted to and is attracted to Ophelia, but because he feels that his life is in danger, he decides to play mad, which was a trope that they did in a number of plays and actually in real life. If you look at I, Claudius, the Emperor Claudius, Claudius becomes an emperor because everyone thought he was not only physically disabled but actually mentally disabled. They thought he was his mind could not deal with normal thoughts and stuff, but he was actually very, very clever, and so pretending to be mad, pretending to losing your mind, that was a thing that you could do, and it sends Ophelia off, and then she sings. So Mona Lisa, men have blamed you, named you, you're so like the lady with a mystic smile. And his voice is so beautiful, and it has quite a high range. And when I was younger, I had a high range, as you do as a boy. And then I thought, well, I want to just get the voice lower. So I pushed to get a lower voice at school because I was forced to go to church at school for 12 years. And so you had to sing these hymns, and I just decided to push it right down. And now I'm trying to get back at it and I do lessons to get the contralto voice in me so that I can sing for Ophelia in the Hamlet play, the partial lines that she does, and it's a broken song that she sings. There is no music in Hamlet, but there is poetic lines there that she obviously sings, and you just have to make up your own. Every production will make up their own music for that. And so I've actually made up the tune that she's actually singing, but she only partially sings. She keeps starting it and stopping it. But Nat King Cole singing Mona Lisa is such a beautiful song, and his voice is beautiful, and it goes so high. His range must have been huge, but it's. It's like I suppose it's the tenor voice of the male voice. When it goes high, it does. You think, well, doesn't that go feminine? And in the old days, we'd say, well, feminine, well, that's not male if you're going there. But a lot of singers in pop and rock and roll, they can sing very high without going to the falsetto of the Bee Gees, and you don't lose your masculinity, and it's just you're hitting your high notes. And I find that interesting as someone who is trans, just looking at what people say. Well, if you're singing in this area, surely that should be something you must consider yourself a different or your sexuality different or something, or you're singing in a range which is not masculine enough, but it doesn't really matter. Just a good beautiful high notes is great. But Nat King Cole singing this song, I've loved it for many years, and he just sings it really well, and I go around copying it, but not obviously sing it as good as he can.
Amazing. I want to talk to you. We've got the Beatles now. This is exciting. Great. So tell me about this.
Well, the Beatles, there's many tracks I could chat. This Here Comes the Sun is George Harrison. I think Something in the Air, the track Something was also a George Harrison track, which I think Paul McCartney mentioned that Frank Sinatra said the best Beatles track he does is Something, which is actually a George Harrison one. And it's interesting that you had such great songwriters working together, sometimes working separately as the time went on between Paul McCartney and John Lennon. But then George was also there, and that's so unusual in a band. If you think of so many other bands, there tends to be one writer, maybe two writers. Queen is kind of different. Nearly all of them were contributing into that pool of writing, but it usually isn't like that. And this is a great one. And he was at Eric Clapton's house, I believe, when he came in. And it also makes me think of just Summertime, and it's just a beautiful song. So there's so many from the Beatles that could be in this list.
But you've chosen this one. This is a great pick.
And in the end, you have to choose, because you said, "Hey, what's your 10 list?" And so when you say top 10, on another day I could go up with another top 10 and another top 10. So
it's about how you're feeling at the time.
Well, that is the truth. Same with films. They are. Instead of that, there are 10 really good songs, and there could be others that could go in there.
Okay, great stuff. We're rattling through your Pride playlist. Bowie.
Yes.
I'm guessing that Bowie, we have so many people come on and say what a big effect that Bowie had on their lives.
No, he didn't.
No?
Okay. Interesting. Well, not like you'd expect. You'd think, Bowie and makeup. No, not glam rock did not. didn't have the guts. I mean, it was a bit too early for me. So if glam rock was 73, 74.
So you were like a decade later, really.
Yeah, 73. What was I? 11. I was not at that point going to say I am trans and I am coming out. Even though kids are much braver these days, I was not brave at that point, and I was just concentrating on football and things like that, and sort of ignoring the rest of it. So I saw it happen, but again, I was also concentrating on film and comedy more than music, and so it was floating me by. But I sort of, there's certain music, and you know, you can go back, you can discover classical music and Mozart, and how did he start, or Beethoven and his journey. The journeys I find interesting, the actual people and what they had to do to get to the place to get the music out of them, and the fact that Bowie had an 11-year start. I dropped out of uni at 19 and my career took off about 30, so I had an 11-year lag where it was just struggling, and I didn't realize he was struggling from the time of the Beatles. I think it's 63, if you go 63 to 74, and Ziggy really takes off, but this is Hunky Dory before that, and Life on Mars. And also I didn't realize it was Rick Wakeman's piano, because I love piano. My mum played piano and I wanted to play piano. I went to school and they said, why don't you play clarinet? And I went, I'd like to play piano, but they said, well, we've got a spare clarinet lying about. And it was like a toy, so I sort of gravitated towards the clarinet, which can be a beautiful instrument, but I made it sound hellish. But I just kept on having to play this clarinet, and it actually blocked me. And I was at school musicals, I had to play the clarinet. I couldn't act, and it was very odd, because I'm begging to say, can I be in the play? No, you have to play the clarinet, because you can play the clarinet. And I could play it okay, I wasn't very good at it, but piano was my love. And Rick Wakeman it's such a, and I think Bowie said this, that Rick Wakeman's piano on it makes the track, makes Life on Mars so epic. It is such a beautiful, he does have such skill on that piano, and he could have been in the Spiders from Mars, but he wanted to go off and set his own band up. So he went off and did that. But yeah, it's a beautiful track, which people I think consider was one of his best, and it's quite bonkers.
I mean, there's everything going on, isn't there?
But yeah, Shad, you can sing it, have lyrics that are quite bonkers, but with such epic sounds, and the piano being so beautiful. The piano, this is the thing. If you don't concentrate on your blowing of the clarinet or a wind instrument, it will not sound good. But piano, you can actually almost fall asleep playing it, because that piano will still give you this bright sound. And I used to, when I was at school, there was an unloved piano that was lived in this big hall. Big school hall, and they used to have the door open. The door was unlocked, and the piano was there, and no one played it. And I used to go in, and it had this big resonance of the hall, and that's where I taught myself piano on this big old warhorse of a grand piano that didn't have one of the great names on it. I don't know what the name was in it, but there was a fire after I left, and it burned down. I think there was a picture of it. Unfortunately, sort of it died in that fire, but I love that piano. So anyway, that's Rick Wakeman's piano on Life on Mars makes it.
Are you enjoying this?
Yes, it's quite intense actually, but you know, I'm very happy talking. See, I am acting in Hamlet, as we've been talking about, but most actors, I think if they come off a script, some of them will have a trickier time of it. But because I've come through a medium, having been a street performer before I was even a stand-up, I'm quite happy to talk, and so I don't think about what I'll slow down if I'm trying to articulate something and it's not coming out right. I'll just slow down until I say, okay, let's get this collection of words right, so that I do articulate correctly, as opposed to someone like a Trump, or if you remember George Bush Jr. used to say things. You got to put food on your family, and you go, that's
misunderstood.
Estimated. When they misspeak, but if they misspeak and they don't hold them, go back and say, hang on, let me get this correct. I mean, Obama used to go, let me be clear here, and say, I'm going to use absolute clarity. So I am very happy to talk.
Here we are, season 4 of Virgin Radio Pride. This is our pop-up station that we do every single year.
Right.
Dying to ask you this question, where you think we're at now, especially with the trans conversation, because it seems to be a hot potato as far as
No,
news.
it's all fine. It's all fine because if you think about it, you've got thousands of years of people being hellish towards the LGBTQ plus people. I don't know to say community, but you can't really say community because it was just people. And we're way better than that. And if you think where marriage equality was at, because it said, the arguments against it were very nasty, vociferous. It was all, the talking was all across the world. Men marry men, women marry women, then cats will marry dogs. And then what? Oh, it's the beginning of the end. And now we got to a place where there are a lot of countries, it has been passed into law, and people realize it's for love. And all those arguments have just floated off in the wind with the right-wing people that came up with them. So now it's trans's time. And this is a tipping point. So even though you feel it's heated, when I came out in '85, there were no conversations about being trans. I was just considered a non-person, a toxic person, and there were no conversations happening. I realized the conversations had to start. So now the conversations are quite heated, but there are some transphobic people out there who are coming in with very negative arguments, and as I just said, marriage equality had to go through this, so the trans community also have to go through this. And I believe in the future we'll get to a place where where people will say, yes, women's rights are human rights and trans rights are human rights. End of story. That's it. We've got to, and I think the majority of women, the majority of trans people, it's all good. There is a certain antagonism that is in there for some people, and we trying to get answers to questions is very tricky because it is a very complicated situation. But as you go forward, there will be a point where we have to get to the tiger position.
Ooh.
I'm calling it.
Okay.
Now, if a tiger was attacking you, you wouldn't go, it's a male tiger, it's a female, I think it's a gay, it could be I'm not sure what the tiger, you don't care about tigers, it's just a tiger, and we get obsessed about male, female, same gay, straight thing, we're obsessed by that, but tigers aren't. If tigers attacking you, go, it's human, it's got long hair, yes, well, it could be Native American, or it could be in the 70s, I don't know, I think they're gay, straight, well, they could be bi, gender neutral, tigers don't care, and we don't care about tigers. So we've got to get to that place where we're just human beings, and everyone live and let live, and that's what we want to get to. People treat other people as you like to be treated yourself. It is called the golden rule. It's in all the major religions, and if we did that tomorrow, then we would have peace in the world.
It reminds me a lot when I came out. It was the shadow. It was kind of 1996. The shadow of the AIDS crisis. People, the age of consent was different, so it was 21 for gay people, and people were scared. People were frightened. As people lashed out, I think, and I got a lot of that when I was growing up and stuff. Do you think it's a similar situation for trans people now in 2024?
I wouldn't link it totally to that particular situation, age, which was a hellish situation for people to go through. But it is a case that I do. The similarity in that is I feel that it is peaking at this point. Because I want to be a member of Parliament. I think some people don't want there to be an elected trans MP, so they will encourage people around the world to get online and attack anyone who supports me. But I'll just carry on, and I'll just be positive, and eventually I'll get in. So it doesn't really matter. I'll just keep pushing. But it just is a heightened moment. But I'm just an individual trying to be very positive in my life. I try to put back. I try and run marathons to give money to charity, try and be as positive a citizen as I can be, citizen for our country, for our continent, and for our world. There's 8 billion people in the world, and we've got to make it so that I believe everyone has the right to a fair chance in life right now, and we have to make that actually happen, because they may have the right for it, but it isn't turning out that way. So that's where we've got to get to this century. We've got 75 years to get it to happen. Otherwise I don't think we're going to make it to the next century. So it's all very heated, but it's only heated amongst certain people. When I was standing in Sheffield for selection there, and in Brighton, the people in the streets, very good, very fine, very positive. So I think that's the general feeling. Most individuals who are not steeped in this, so just going live and let live and be your own authentic self.
You, that kind of thing. Okay, great. Let's pick another song from your list.
Well, the next song we have in here is Jimi Hendrix. This is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which I just love the fact that it had come out, I think, when would it have come out in the week? Well, a few days before. It was that week, and I got the impression the gig he did, which Paul McCartney was at, I think this was the first official one where the band Jimi Hendrix Experience was playing in London. I'm not sure what the club was, but he put it in. They'd got it into a shape to play in that, and it doesn't play like the Beatles did it, because I realise it's Jimmy's guitar goes. He just does solos over a place where the song could go to a different place, like the middle eight or wherever it is. But it's just one great, amazing that he put it together so quickly. Had the chutzpah to, or the ego to say, Paul McCartney's there, I'll just do it for Paul McCartney. Having, I think Paul had written Sgt. Pepper's that track more than John, and to do it there, and it has this great energy of him and Jimi Hendrix. So
what a thing to witness if you were there as well.
And hopefully you'll be playing the live version. I think there is there might be a recorded version, but I know there is a live version.
You prefer the live one?
Yeah,
okay.
I think it is the live. I think maybe that's the only version that exists, but there might be a recorded version, but the live version is the one, because you can feel it, you can just hear them talking beforehand, and
we're going to get straight into this next one, the Kinks Waterloo Sunset.
Yes, well, the Kinks Waterloo Sunset. I mean, the best place to see the Waterloo Sunset is at Festival Hall. If you go up to the first floor, or it could be the second floor, they've got a whole balcony there, and you can see the Waterloo Sunset going down, and that's what it's about. It's great because the Kinks writing about something that's very London, very British, and I love that because you can get songs you think, well, rock and roll coming through in the 50s and 60s, it was all led by America until the Beatles' revolution, and it could be led by us, or now it's whatever song where what anyone wants to write a song now. I think you just have more chance of songs coming from any part of the world. But it's Waterloo Sunset, and I was a street performer at Covent Garden. I used to go over to the South Bank just by Festival Hall to perform. It was very difficult back in the 80s, but now I always thought if they put shops down here, they could make it a lot better. But it's until London Eye turned up. Then the London Eye, the big Ferris wheel that's there, and then they thought there's a lot of people hanging around to get on the Ferris wheel, because that was a big success. That was just there for the millennium, but they decided to keep it on, just like Eiffel Tower. If people know about it, there was a festival in Paris, and that was the Eiffel Tower was just supposed to be there temporarily. So they kept the London Eye on, and then they decided to put shops all down on the Festival Hall, and there's tons of people down there, and you can do street shows, and that's where I first saw Waterloo Sunsets happening, and I just know that. And I've performed outside. I've performed in the bar. I've never performed in the Festival Hall. I performed in the bar of the Festival Hall.
Have you?
Yeah, in the front when I was a street performer.
Yeah.
And in front of the Festival Hall, there's film footage out there. A young filmmaker said he knew that I did street performing. He said, "Could you do your street show just in front of Festival Hall? I want to do that." And he shot it with film. I think 35. It could have been 16mm film.
Yeah.
And it's out there somewhere, but I've never seen it again. But this guy will know who he is, and it's somewhere out there's this footage of me, very fresh-faced, and I had to work really hard to get an audience there, because the human traffic, the footfall as you'd call it, just was not there.
Yeah.
Now it is. Now there's tons of people down there.
I was going to ask you, would that be an easier experience now if you were a street performer?
Yes, it absolutely would. On the South Bank, I just said this is a perfect place to do street shows, and street shows can really add to the atmosphere. But there's not enough footfall down here. I called it human traffic. I made up my own phrases, and they just looked at me. I said, if you could put shops down here, they're not going to listen to me. But
was that a scary experience? I must ask you, doing doing those kind of performances,
doing street shows.
Yeah, because you can see the reaction and the whites of people's eyes and stuff. Was it a good experience for you?
It's good to get to the point where you can do them, but to learn to do them is very hard.
Yeah,
it's just very hard, and the audience would walk away in the middle of, you'd be in the middle of well, initially we were doing these failed tricks, and then we did sword fighting show. This is me and my partner, and then I did a solo show. And the fact, if you did one thing and then you said, okay, we've done that thing, now we're going to do the next thing, now we're going to do the next thing. At the end of each thing, well, there's a little bit of applause point maybe. Then the audience would, the water evaporation trick. This bucket of water, this plastic bucket of water, is going to disappear before your very eyes. This is the kind of rubbish things I used to do. And once you've done this weird comedy version trick of making water disappear, and then they go, okay, let's go and have a cup of coffee, that wasn't very good, and they go, and then your audience could start to dismantle before your very eyes. And I remember doing that. It was very dispiriting, but I learned amazing things. And because I played that, I could play Hollywood Bowl, because stand-ups were not playing solo shows in Hollywood Bowl. Now they are, since I've started playing it. And it might be egotistical to say that I've started that, because stand-ups were playing at Hollywood Bowl before that in Los Angeles, but they were doing support acts within someone else's show. But now solo acts have gone in there and they've been doing it, but I don't think they were doing it before. I don't believe so. I'm claiming that.
No, that's amazing.
But it's just because if you're playing in the West Piazza, Covent Garden, it is a massive, it's an opera-sized pitch with no roof. It goes up to the gods. So, and bands got used to playing outdoors in a post, Beatles and Shea Stadium, and then, because before that, were bands playing outdoors? I'm not sure so much, but now it's standard thing. Bands go outdoors, yes, just turn up the amps. But for comedy people, it's difficult because of the laughter, which we need so much. It goes up from the people. If you're outdoors, it does not bounce off the walls and come to you. So it feels like you're playing into a vacuum.
Right.
So we actually have to mic the audience when I'm playing outdoors, and we have on the foldback. You put it into the foldback, so you put microphones under their seats,
so it comes back at you.
Yeah, so you can hear whether they're reacting to something. Otherwise, it actually sounds like they're reacting to nothing.
Okay.
And that's why I think a lot of stand-ups go out and they because they won't look at that thing. They just say, I stood there and I did my stuff and people didn't laugh, so I'm not going to do outdoors. But outdoors is fine, but it's just tricky because laughter goes to the heavens.
We're going to get to the Beach Boys. Can I ask you a question about, seeing as we're on Virgin Radio, Pride? Big question this, what does Pride mean to you?
Well, I think it means different things to different people, but for me, it is pride in oneself, and it was. And well, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because it seemed it was something to do with LGBTQ plus community, and it's got even more than that now. It's opened up so that it's just pride. It's
allies, friends.
Yes,
yeah,
and it's the mental health that goes with it. Have pride and stand up for yourself. And even though people can be tough about things, they were a lot tougher before, and they're a lot more. People can be very negative and nasty about things before, and hopefully we've moved into a better place, even though it can seem like we're still stuck.
Because I've had people say to me, and these are gay people, say to me, why do we need it anymore? We've got everything that we need. And I always find that a fascinating remark from people.
No, I think it's fine that it's there, but I do say when LGBTQ plus
IA.
Well, yes, I put the plus in there to cover all the letters of the alphabet, but when we hit boring, then we've made it. So when people say, gay, lesbian, trans, you go, fine, but what do you do? Oh, I'm a librarian. I'm an astronaut. Are you a good librarian? Are you a good astronaut? Because that's what we want to have. If you're a bad librarian or a bad astronaut, bad astronauts are the ones that land on the wrong planet. Oh, I landed on the wrong planet. Are you a bad astronaut? Go to the back of the queue. Well, we'll only let you go as far as Hounslow in your next rocket ship. So yes, it's So that's it. So when we hit boring, okay. and it's getting more boring, which is good.
I was going to ask you, if I may, just ask you this: what work have we got left to do? As a community?
That's a very difficult. That's a very difficult question to answer. It's tried to get it to boring. Like if you say I've got blue eyes, people go, oh, you've got to get it to that.
Right. We have some work to do then.
Yeah. But it's not. It's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, for me to be in this building chatting with you openly on this station, bearing in mind I used to read headlines in the Sun and the News of the World stuff, and we're in this building, we're having this conversation. That's a 360, isn't it?
Yes, well, I wouldn't say because that sounds it's come all the way around, is that what you're saying? A 180. But even that, I'd say it's more we have come a long way, because I think it's a graph. It's a graph line that goes up and up and up, and we are in a way better place. We're 70% there, 80% there. And then there's other countries where it still might be backwards. Some of the places where missionaries went out and said Christianity, and they said, okay, we'll take your Christianity, and now we're going to put it back on you, and we're going to say that LGBTQ people, we're going to outlaw them. You go, whoa, hang on, this is blowback, religious blowback. So hopefully we can get to a place where people treat other people as they'd like to be treated themselves, and that happens around the world for 8 billion people. That's what I'd like to get to.
Let's hope it happens. We're going to swerve into the Beach Boys now.
Yes, Beach Boys. Brian Wilson and Pet Sounds, and what he was doing there. And is this from that album? I'm not sure if it is. But this, I could... The fact that they were competing with the Beatles, I found very interesting. The fact that the a cappella, the way that they were singing it, and the Beatles were singing differently, but then some of the Beatles, I think, after that got influenced by how Brian Wilson and the rest of the Beach Boys were doing this, and I think it was Al Jardine who found this song. This song is actually from. It comes under different names, but it's similar names, and it's from Bahamas, from Nassau in the Bahamas. And it's a traditional folk rock song, folk song, and apparently it was played to Brian Wilson in its basic form, in its 3-chord form, and he wasn't interested. But then it was replayed, and I think Al Jardine changed it and put some other chords in, and it implied where it could go, and then Brian overnight just changed it around and turned it into this, which became one of their biggest ever hits. And because I remember listening to the lyrics and thinking, how does that pertain to them? And it's not. It's actually a folk song. That's why. It's to people going out in a sloop from Nassau in Bahamas.
Have you always been a fan
of the Beach Boys?
Yeah.
I like their song. My tastes were very mainstream, and then they got more alternative as I realized, which I think happens to anyone probably. I remember watching comedy on BBC One or ITV on the Saturday night and thinking, this big, broad comedy, this is amazing. And then later on I look back at it and go, wow, that's so mainstream. That is not my taste at all now, because music-wise or drama-wise or comedy-wise, people will be pressing the classic buttons to get a reaction. But then something that's more alternative, more independent, more different, more otherworldly, that once you've seen a whole load of standard mainstream things, you want to see something, well, a number of us want to see something more nuanced, different, twisted, back to front, upside down. Oh, wow, I see what they're doing here. Make it unusual, and then you're attracted to it. And sometimes you can have something that crosses over. That's the perfect landing. It's something that's crossover between alternative and mainstream, and it sits in there in a place where big audiences like it, or great criticism. I mean, Oppenheimer should not be 950 million at the box office. That shouldn't have happened. You would have thought it would have been for a select amount of people. It's a bit like Gandhi when that came out. Apparently when Gandhi came out, because Richard Attenborough, he spent ages, he didn't want to direct it, and he was asked to direct it by an Indian citizen. Some guy said, I think this is something you should pay attention to, and you should do a film on him. And he just started directing at this point, and then he pushed to do it, and he was desperately trying to get funds to make it throughout the whole of the making of the film. And then when it was bought by whichever mainstream studio bought it in America, Universal, it could be Paramount, Fox, or whoever it was, the guy who ran it was wise enough to say, people in America do not know who Gandhi is, even though he did exist and he had his time. They weren't paying attention to that. So I'm going to spend a year putting out documentaries, things like that, to get the knowledge of Gandhi up, and then we'll put this film out.
Wow.
Which is, that shows an intelligence, an emotional intelligence, and a business intelligence of someone willing to say, okay, we're going to hold this back, we're going to buy it, keep it there, and then we'll bring it out a year later. why not? It's a great idea.
Amazing. Coming to the end, can I ask you a massive question? Can I get personal? You can chuck it back at me. How happy are you?
Oh, I've been happy since 1987.
Really?
Well, I'm content. I think I don't get that happy because things, Mum died, so I know bad things can happen. I have a compressed emotional state. I think me and Dad were very similar in this way. So I never get that elated. I never get that depressed. But yeah, I went solo in '87, and working with my partner Rob Ballard was great. And before that, we'd been a 4-person act. So we'd been a 4-person act at university, at Sheffield University, and then we were a double act down at Covent Garden in London. But when I went solo, I could just work as hard as I wanted. I could work whenever I wanted to. I could do ad libs in the middle of the show. There was just such control that came to me, to anyone who goes solo, and I really liked that. So I'd never planned to do it. So the solo me, and I'm now doing a solo-Hamlet at Riverside Studios from the 23rd of May. I did not. That was never the place I was going to go to. I was never going to be the solo performer. I remember watching Billy Connolly do his stand-up and thinking, God, this is really funny. And I didn't even think, I wouldn't do that, because I never was going to do that. I just used to do character comedy, and it was always sketches, and that was it. It just did not. It was not in my brain, and then my brain got to the point that I have to learn stand-up. It is the place, it is the happening thing, and I've got to learn how to do this. It's the only way forward. So when I went solo on the streets, a year later I went solo. I started doing solo stand-up, and then it took off, and now we got solo-Hamlet.
And also, here you are, completely being yourself.
Yes.
I mean, that's happened recently, hasn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, in the last couple of years, I remember reading the article about how you wanted to be known with pronouns and
no, but that, I came out 40 years ago, so I would push back on the idea that it's happened recently. The pronouns that's not the be-all end-all. Adding Suzy to my names is not the be-all and end-all. I came out in '85, so I'm very proud of that. And I came out to my dad 6 years later, so it took a long time to come out to him. But that fight from '85 through the '90s, my career was nowhere when I came out. I didn't have a career, and then it was about to come out. That's when I told Dad, just before I told the press, because I knew it was good. I wanted to tell the press, so it was out, so I wasn't going to live a lie. So that was all the fighting that happened. So pronouns, yeah, it's part of it, but it's not.
And I haven't asked you about that particular time when you with your dad and with the press. That must have been difficult at that time, particularly difficult.
Well, it was just difficult because telling anyone's parents is difficult. You don't know how they're going to react. And I've heard horror stories, so it's not a standard reaction. And Dad was just very positive and said, well, he thought about it. He said he was not best pleased in the documentary. Believe you can see him say not best pleased. It's not what he was planning, but he said he was okay about it, and if Mum had been alive, she would have been okay about it too, which was a nice thing for him to have written. So that was cool. And when I told the press about it, they were just a bit bemused, because they said, well, in stand-up, because I was mainly wearing trousers at that point, and then I thought, okay, I'll throw on some makeup and a dress, and so I'll do the stand-up like that. And then they went, oh, okay, so you are trans, but you look a mess. And then I thought, okay, I got to work on that. And so that was all through the 90s, then going into the zeros, and then into the teens. And so, yeah. So when I'd be thinking about saying she, her, because I prefer she, her, don't mind he, him. Prefer Suzy, don't mind Eddie. Some people call me Suzy Eddie. I've just added.
That's when I called you at Carfest, and you came on and you said you messed that up. We laughed about it.
Well, did I say that? I wouldn't have said it that strong. No, it's just because the first time I sort of announced it, and then actually Chris Evans said Suzy Eddie in a very welcoming way, and I thought, well, no, I'm not Suzy Eddie, like Jean-Marie. It's not that. And then I thought, well, actually, if someone wants to call me Suzy, I don't mind that, because it contains everything in there, and I do feel that I'm gender fluid, so I have been completely upfront and honest about this since '85. So the she, her, he, him, people can't make a mistake with me. They can't get it wrong. They can use whichever they want. And my brother was calling me Eddie, and then he sometimes goes Suzy, and my director sometimes does Suzy, but mainly prefers Eddie. I want to keep Eddie going because you can have dead names. I don't have dead name. Eddie's still going. I made up Eddie because I'm an Edward in the passport, so I thought Eddie sounded better, and I think Suzy sounds great. So people can choose. And they do, and sometimes I've had people back in Eastbourne, where I grew up, Eastbourne and Bexhill, the twin towns. Granddad born in one and Grandma born in the other, and I had these walk past these kids, and they must have been late teens, early 20s, and went, Eddie, Suzy, Eddie. And they were shouting both at me. So fine, cool.
You must have so many people who say thank you for being honest and being out there and being who you are. Years before, it was, some might say courageous, brave, fearless, or whatever. But you have been that beacon, and for a lot of people, a role model.
Well, I was a role model for myself, really. It was more selfish than that. I mean, yes, I did think, okay, I felt I was wanting to be in the forces when I was a kid. This is the idea that I could fight, and then I thought, actually, which war they're going to send me to, because I don't want to go and fight World War II all over again. But that's not going to happen. So I didn't do that. But I was ready to, if this is me. So let's be honest about this. And if people give me a hard time and attack me in the streets, which they have, or hurl abuse at me in the streets, which they have, I'll just stand up for myself and push back.
Have you had a lot of that?
Fighting a small amount, hurling abuse quite a lot in the earlier days, less so these days.
Is that because people are used to seeing you?
Don't know, because I go to countries where I'm less known, but I don't know, maybe I'm not sure what it is. I carry myself in a way that where I carry myself in a certain way that is where I feel I'm a citizen. I pay my taxes. I have a right to be here. I don't go around as if I should apologize. So just like any citizen of any country would say, I'm here. I'm fine. I'm treating other people as I like to be treated. I try and be as polite as I can, and so I'm here. So I'm being my own authentic self.
We have time for one more track, and can I just say?
Oh, with two, we've missed one out.
Well, as long as you don't mind,
no. Do you want me to choose one of the two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
But can I just say, before you choose it, thank you so much. Thank you for being amazing. I loved meeting you last summer. That was such a cracking weekend at Carfest.
That was very nice.
You kept your word. Thank you to your team as well for coming in, and all the best with the production. We love you here.
Thank you very much.
Come back and see us soon. It's been really special spending this hour.
Thank you.
The start of Pride season with Eddie Izzard. The final track is...
Well, let's go Dusty Springfield, Take Another Piece of My Heart, and this... There are different versions of this, but I like her version, and I did play it in a film. I played the piano of this because I love playing piano.
Where can we find that?
Romance and Cigarettes is the film.
Yeah.
It's in there. I don't know if I don't think they put a soundtrack out on it, and I think if they did, they would probably put someone else in. But that's where I played it on. Yeah. Okay. I'll search it out on YouTube in a minute. Thank you so much. Cheers. Lovely to see you again. Good to see you. See you soon. Cheers. Thank you. Virgin Radio.